Great. Thank you for that, Anthony. Hello, everyone. Now, ahead of this presentation, I spent some time thinking about how I might be able to introduce myself, because obviously a lot of you won't know me, but try and introduce myself in an interesting way. And I attended an award ceremony in Jersey last week, which was great. And one of the hosts there, or one of the key hosts there, was Dame Edna Rice, a former director of the Bank of England. And she was chairing a panel discussion. And she, a bit like this, she was introducing each of the panelists, but she didn't introduce them by who they were, but she introduced them by who they weren't, using a famous namesake. So, for example, the first guest was David Postlethwaite, and she said, "This is not David Postlethwaite, the famous consultant hypnotherapist from the south of England. It's not David Postlethwaite, the famous character from the blockbuster movie Alien 3. It is David Postlethwaite, head of sustainability, KPMG, Channel Islands." Great. I thought, that's it. I'm going to do that. All I need to do is find a few famous Russell Waites, say I'm not them, and introduce myself. So, very eagerly, I typed my name into Google, very eagerly typed my name into ChatGPT, very eagerly typed my name into Instagram. Nothing. Not a single famous Russell Waite. Not now, not ever in history. So that's a bit crestfallen, or a bit deflating, as you can imagine. So hopefully this presentation, you may not remember me by my name, but you will remember me by what I have to say. So, I'm Russell Waite, over from the Channel Islands. Now, I'm very proud to be representing the investment team here alongside David, and we are now 26 people, which is great. We are operating from 2 jurisdictions, and we are managing $2.4 billion, which keeps us busy every day. And we are looking after the money of 1,000 clients, 1,000 client portfolios. And managing real-world portfolios in a world as it is today, where there's a lot of noise, demands several things, one of which is of course, discipline. Another thing is process. Another thing is governance. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that as we brought our businesses together. And one of the things I wanted to mention based on that is those values of governance and process and discipline are very much reflected in Conscious Capital, which I know Anthony talked about a little bit earlier. And this is this overarching sustainability framework, which really defines how our business operates, how it invests, and how it grows. So to give you a little bit of an insight into that, I'm relatively new to the business, but already Conscious Capital helps me think about, or helps me frame, how I will deal with clients, how I will think about investments, how we will think about governing a particular process, how we will think about our behavior in local communities. It's a very, very powerful framework, and so much so that award ceremony I was talking about earlier, we won an award for our sustainability and this approach. So it's really being recognized. And me, we're relatively new to this business. I'm very proud of how we operate under the Conscious Capital philosophy. And there's a saying, isn't there, in business, what gets measured gets done. So in Conscious Capital, we do set ourselves some targets, and we measure our progress against those targets. Those targets are established by the World Economic Forum, so they're very real, very challenging, and we keep an eye on how we are progressing. And in 2024, we launched the Conscious Capital Charitable Foundation, and again, as Anthony mentioned earlier, we are 30 years old this year, and we are purposely wanting to commit to our local communities, charitable donations, 30 in total across all the jurisdictions in which we operate. And that's something we're enjoying and getting a real reward from as a business. So there's a little bit of introduction to Conscious Capital. Now, there we go. We mentioned earlier that I've represented businesses that has recently, or was it with a business that has joined Capital International. And we have spent a lot of time over the last 6 months harmonizing process, harmonizing philosophy, trying to get the best out of the different businesses that have come together to optimize our solutions for our clients. And I could have had a few slides here talking about the painstaking work we've done there, and we reflected that perhaps that's not as engaging as it could have been. We really enjoy it, but we're mindful that you might not be that engaged. So in talking and thinking about how we manage assets now as Capital International, I'd like to leave you with 3 takeaways or 3 messages. First and foremost, we are independent, and we're very proud to be independent. You know, we form our own views, we do our own research, we build our own investment solutions. That independence for us is a real strength in the arenas in which we operate. In terms of conscious capital, which I mentioned earlier, in thinking about investments, it guides us in how we evaluate opportunities. It guides us in terms of how we steward capital. It guides us in so many ways that helps us. From my background in terms of sustainable investment, I've found it very, very helpful, that conscious capital framework again. And the third takeaway is governance is the backbone of trust. Now, when you are entrusted by clients to manage their assets, going back to those 1,000 portfolios, you have to have process. You have to gain the trust of those investors. And we've developed over time, and I've been able to participate in that, a sequence of rhythms and disciplines that kind of guide us and govern us in terms of how we think about asset allocation, how we think about the macroeconomic environment, all those things that go into developing portfolios for clients. And a consequence of everything that we have done over these last 6 months in developing these range of solutions I'm quickly going to introduce to you, they can be characterized by being, carefully curated. They are research-driven, and they are high conviction. Everything that we think investors are looking for. So what do those solutions actually look like? Well, that seems quite bright there, doesn't it? Here we go. We've got a range of solutions based on risk and based on style. Now, our core solutions here, which we term Signature, is really investors getting access to our broad market exposure, market participation in the developed world. And it's a set of solutions which enables us to showcase our stock picking skills, ranging from cautious, as you can see, all the way up to full equity risk, 100% equity portfolio managed by or termed as Martello. And it's a very successful global equity fund. I was chatting to a few people earlier, and it is on people's radars. It's doing very, very well. We then have a range of solutions which are called Spectrum, which are more diversified by nature globally in terms of asset class as well, more resilient, and they are thematically driven in terms of how they are allocated, and tend to be more resilient during periods of volatility. So suitable for those clients who are looking for that kind of solution. And then in my world, using the world, we have a set of more sustainable solutions or green solutions, which we term Better World, and that's a group of solutions that are globally diversified, globally allocated, ambitiously invested to allocate capital to promote the progress towards a better world. A real passion of mine and my colleagues, and again, growing number of clients wanting to allocate in that kind of style, and these are the solutions which we have to cater for that. Right, so there's our set of solutions, and I couldn't stand on this stage like everybody else and not talk about artificial intelligence. So what I've talked about previously in those early slides is all about governance, all about process, all about discipline, and then of course along has come artificial intelligence. Now, how are we using that as an investment team? And this is more of a personal journey for me around using artificial intelligence. We've all had a little bit of fun, haven't we? When we first interact with it, we start to make or manipulate pictures of our friends, our family, our work colleagues in this case. It took me ages to get that Hollywood jawline there on the picture on the right. But by the time I was doing the picture on the left, I was much more efficient. My personal productivity, as David was talking about, had really accelerated. Now, of course, we do much more than make pictures of each other, but that seeing the value of productivity out of just this exercise was very, very enlightening for me personally. And then this next slide was a bit of learning around artificial intelligence where, just understanding that it's not always right. It's a fabulous, as David said, it's given us superpowers in many ways, but it's not always right. This was a large language model where, it is trained to be, a grandmaster level chess player. But we asked the question of the AI tool, show us a chessboard where white is one move away from checkmate, and there's a lot of mistakes here. You know, I think we're missing a king on the table in black, which is, you know, you can't have a chess game without a black king in this situation. So it will make mistakes. Obviously, it does wonderful, wonderful things, but recognizing that it is not always right. It will be confident that it is right, but the way it's developed, it can't always be right. And this brings us on to the last example where, again, I think this has been not an urban myth, because it's true. If you asked quite a few of the earlier iterations of the AI tools or the large language models, how many R's are there in strawberry, it would always say, very confidently, 2. And of course, the answer is not 2, it's 3. And the reason there, of course, is that the whole design of the large language models is all about correlation and probability and patterns. The large language model doesn't see words and letters like we do. However, again, I'm not standing here saying that artificial intelligence isn't a wonder, because it is. And again, the presentation that Alex gave us, you can see the utility that you can get from that is truly, truly fantastic. Now, again, I'm a bit of not a novice, and perhaps I'm similar to a lot of people in this room where we've kind of, as those slides were saying, we've kind of tentatively moved into AI. We've started to use it more as a, you know, on the periphery of what we do, rather than actually embedding it into our process. Now, for us at Capital International now, we are really looking to grasp the utility. We've really recognized what it can do for us. It's aiding us with our research. It's enabling us to stress test particular assumptions. Really a very, very valuable tool for us. And it's also helping us with how we communicate to clients. And this is just a little extract from my co-pilot. And you can see we've been developing some agents. And those agents are now providing utility. And again, to quote David, they are aiding our productivity. So again, just thinking about what you've heard from us over the last few presentations, and this one here, AI, as well as providing utility to us as an enterprise, of course, has been a wonderful investment opportunity. So we've got a lot of investments in that space, be it directly or via funds. And this slide here is similar to the one that David made reference to, and it really highlights those investment themes that we are allocating capital to today. And the one on the right here, energy and transition, is quite interesting in the context of AI. And this is something I'd like to finish on. AI demands, as all of us in this room use AI more and more, our businesses use AI more and more, the demand for energy is almost going to be the limiting factor in terms of getting the productivity gains that David has talked about. Now, you might famously remember then when President Trump was in Davos recently, and he said, "Oh, the Chinese, they don't use windmills. It's all been a big scam, a way of China making money out of the rest of the world." Here's a picture on the left of a province in China where you can clearly see renewables and windmills being used, to quote Trump. But the message from this is, look how much electricity, or the capability that China now has in terms of creating electricity to power its AI advance, way, way, way in excess of the US. Now, the US has fallen considerably behind, and it started to recognize this. And even though Trump, at the top of the tower is very negative around renewables and windmills, actually below the surface, if we can go to the next slide, I think we have, there we go. Below the surface, renewables are really starting to solve a lot of that. Not starting to solve, but they are deliberately now being used to try and narrow that gap between China and the US. This chart on the left-hand side, as you're looking, you'll actually see that US electricity generation over the next couple of years is going to be dominated by renewables. Contrary to what Trump is saying, renewables are playing a role. And again, thinking of sustainability, and a point I'd like to finish on, clean energy, the production of that energy, the storage of that energy, the transmission of that energy around the economy and the global economy is becoming ever more important and a very attractive investment opportunity in our eyes. And starting to be seen now. Clean energy ETF attracts giant investor inflows. So everything we've heard about AI, as fantastic as it is, it's also creating investment opportunities in other parts of the investment world. And as an investment team, that's what we're looking to take advantage of. And you can see how we try and join the dots when we're building investment portfolios. Right, I've finished. As a reminder, my name is Russell Waite. Thanks very much.